I've never said anything as extreme as stuff Chris has said. I've talked about demographics in a very straightforward, factual way, and I'm on the SPLC hate list as a white supremacist. So I think there's some truth to the idea that if you go out and talk about these issues, you talk about demographic replacement, you will be ostracized from so-called mainstream society.
There's articles about me all the time too.
Do you disagree with the fact that 75+% of Hispanics vote Democrat, 90+% of blacks vote Democrat, but whites vote Republican, and for limited government, 60-40? This is all research data.
That's all research data in general, but you're talking to a research nerd. So I like to analyze trends. And according to trends, Donald Trump got the biggest swath of African-American male votes in the history of Republican elections. So you look at that trend and you say, that's a positive trend. Why are things going that way? And I think things are honestly going that way because the public isn't going to be stupid for that long. You're right. The way that we come to about thinking about things is based on information. This is what I said. You said there are things outside of information. Sure, maybe, but ultimately it comes down to information. And I think we're getting to a point in our country where people are starting to become tired of these kinds of myths that we see. That's why I've red pill black. I like her, what she does. She's a very surface area black conservative. She kind of red pills black conservatives who are just starting to become awake to kind of how they've been disenfranchised by liberalism. So the good thing is, that's what you start to do. You take a look at the trend. More blacks are starting to vote for Trump. They're voting conservative. There are some things you're waking up to, and you want to capitalize off of that. And the way you capitalize off of that is by speaking just very sternly about what has happened in this country, and you don't have to go off on a huge tangent about the JQ and all this other shit and race realism. That's merely going to turn people away. So if you want to capitalize off of the trend that we're currently seeing, you want to capitalize that by not, showing Chris Cantwell and showing, all the crazy shit that you do. You want to capitalize that by, showing a Mike Cernovich or showing someone who is not going to talk about these things in such a just a visceral negative reaction. You have to understand, and this is, I guess, optics. You can say, a visceral negative reaction, but you have to understand some people just aren't going to want to turn on a podcast and hear the things that you're talking about.
Yeah, understandably, not everybody's going to listen to the radical agenda, and it is never intended for primetime cable. Okay, but you said Trump got the most percentage of blacks of Republicans in some period of time. Do you know off the top of your head what that percentage was?
11%, 11 point something.
So Trump was the most successful Republican, and in such a period of time, with the black vote, and he got 11%. And you're going to tell me that I'm supposed to accept that? I just got to go get out into the hood and convince the other 90% of black people.
Yeah.
That's going to work out fantastically. I think that I could have a lot more luck getting white people pissed off enough to secede. I think that one of these things is a lot more likely to succeed than the other.
Agree to disagree. You got to realize.
To be fair, the GOP spent millions and millions of dollars in billions in minority outreach in the past 2 decades, and what they have to show for it is from 2004 to 2016, Hispanics have gone from 44% Democrat to 47% Democrat, gone from 20% Republican in 2008 to 16% Republican in 2016, and then among whites have gone from 46% Republican in 92 to 54% Republican now, 46% Democrat in 92 to 39% Republican now. So the trends, actually, there is a racial stratification taking place. Blacks and Hispanics are getting more and more left-wing, identifying more left-wing. Whites are identifying more right-wing. And that's what we're seeing bear out, even while the GOP spends billions of dollars, puts up all their minority candidates on the front of the stage. It isn't working. It isn't working.
Right. Because and the Democrats absolutely know this, and that's why they're winning, because they'll take it into consideration, and we won't.
They're not winning.
The Democrats
they were winning. They're not winning anymore. You have to realize we just passed tax reform because of our brother Scott, Senator Tim Scott, who actually did a lot of work lobbying. And you have to consider that. You have to consider the amount of African Americans who are now represented in Congress as Republicans. So
it's like
here's the thing.
Isn't it?
Listen.
We can either continue across this trajectory and try to make some gains wherever we can. We were getting swapped in presidential elections. We just got a Republican president, but guess what just happened in the era of our first Republican president in a while? You have people with fringe and radical beliefs coming out of the woodworks, and then you have Vice putting the camera in front of your face because that's who they want to show. They want more Chris Cantwell because Chris Cantwell means more votes for the Dems. Now, if you're just happy getting a bunch of money with whatever your radio, cryptocurrency, however that's working out, if you're happy doing that and putting liberals in office, then by all means continue to do so. But that literally is the crux of the optics debate.
Well, I don't suspect that it is because you and I don't have the same goals, fella. That's sort of been like the conflict in the entire course of this conversation.
Do you want Republicans in office?
You think I prefer Republicans in office to Democrats? I most certainly do. But winning federal elections is not exactly like, I have time preference here. Okay, winning the next election is not the goal. I'm trying to save my race and nation. Okay, and that is not going to be resolved by trying to bring blacks under the wing at a cost per vote that is so staggeringly inefficient that it causes me to lose sight of the goal at hand, right? So what I want to do, as I said at the outset of the thing, is to get enough whites pissed off enough to do something about it in a meaningful fashion that we will not have to worry about this stuff, okay? If Donald Trump got 11% of the black vote, and that was more than anybody, it's impossible, right? How are you telling me that it's just a matter of convincing people with the ideas when he had the most success of anybody? It was only 11%. The fact of the matter is that ethnicity, demography, has so much of an impact on this stuff. And everybody, in my opinion, you say Vice News puts the camera in your face because it makes more people vote Democrat. I say that the people who are telling me that I shouldn't be taking demographics into consideration are telling me that I should be ignoring the most salient detail in all political discourse and telling me that that's the way to win. That's not true. It's demonstrably false. And so who's the one who's trying to tank the thing here?
The person who is throwing away all the progress that we've made here by trying to you want people to go to New Hampshire and succeed and have a succession. A succession,
I want to have a secessionist movement. I am not trying to convince blacks to vote for Donald Trump because I think that I can have a lot more impact convincing whites to secede from the Union.
So you're conceding the country. You're conceding the country.
I am conceding territory. Yeah.
Okay, there you go. You got Chris Cantwell to admit that he is conceding America, ladies and gentlemen.
I mean, he's been very, very clear about secessionism for a very long time.
I don't think that the United States of America can stand as a contiguous system of government at this point. Half the country is absolutely terrified and loathsome of the other half. Even if you take ethnicity out of it, on party alone, the Democrats are ready to overthrow the government because Donald Trump is president of the United States. That's what Antifa and all this rioting in the streets is, okay? And believe me when I tell you, when they get back in power, if they are ever allowed to do that, and I'm terrified that it might happen, okay? If the Democrats are ever allowed to take power, they will take revenge on us. It will not be just another Clinton administration. They will wreak havoc upon this country, and it's really going to be bad. I'm terrified of it. I'm serious. And so this is an urgent situation that is not going to be solved by trying to convince blacks that conservatism is the way to go. It's ridiculous to say that it is.
How do you win elections, bro? You need to win elections in order to fight off the deep state. We need more elected officials. We need more conservative justice. How do we get that without winning hearts and minds? And
so people have been trying, but that's exactly what everybody's been trying to do while the country's been going all to hell, right? So, and every step of the way, it's gotten worse. And so if we just keep on saying all right, just try to convince black folks that you're not racist, it's ridiculous. It's not going to work. And so the reason I don't think that you're going to win the hearts and minds of the country. It's just impossible to do.
The goal isn't to
and people have been trying to do
it.
This has been going on for decades, centuries, okay? And it's not working. And so there needs to be a separation. There are a certain group of people who want to live a certain way, and they need to live under a separate system of government from people who want to live in a completely different way. The only way that we can live peacefully amongst each other is to live under separate systems of government.
Well, history is always our best analysis of what happens in the future, and I think it would be obvious that any secession movement would just wouldn't work. It's just impractical. It's just LARPy to talk about. This is what I tell Fuentes about his ethno-state concept. It's just LARPy. You're not moving to Utah or New Hampshire and starting a cohort of.
You're LARPing as a white guy, okay? And so the idea that the idea that I'm going to convince. blacks who have been voting 89% at minimum for Democrats, that I'm just gonna drop my racist veneer and walk through the hood and start talking to them about how tax cuts are going to improve their lives is foundationally ridiculous.
This is what the Democrats want. No, this is what the Democrats want.
Serious person who honestly believes that. Okay, it's a distraction, and it has nothing to do with reality. That is not a winning political strategy, and there's no honest person who believes it.
You're giving credence to what the people, the folks are Gab, who are saying that you're a plant. You're giving credence to them right now because you're literally saying abandon all hopes to flip districts and turn them red. Abandon those areas. Abandon gerrymandered districts. No,
I am saying something very different.
Let me finish.
You're miscategorizing what I said.
You seem to be advocating for us to not waste our time in order to get more votes from people who would traditionally vote for a different party, which means you're kind of you're not only agreeing with Democrats, but you're advocating for things they would also advocate.
Votes from minority groups that have never voted Republican ever, that have gone 9-1 for the opposition, right? That is not
expending resources. This is a question of resource and energy allocation. Okay, we have a limited number of we have a limited amount of time in each of our lives. We have a limited number of people. We have a limited amount of money, and if we start pouring that into the hood, it's just going to get sucked up like everything else that goes in there. It's not worth it politically any more than it is economically.
That's because you also don't understand what happens when these kind of rehabilitation programs go to the inner city. Maxine Waters created a $3.5 million facility that pretty much got shoved into the pockets of politicians in the area. If you knew what you were talking about, you would know that's kind of how these restoration projects work. It's how they function. When you talk about the RNC spending billions of dollars over the past couple of decades into multicultural political projects, that money is not actually going into any tangible projects that work because their strategy, because the way they strategize and implement these projects are completely just obtuse. They have no foresight. They have no understanding of how to navigate these kinds of areas. So money often ends up getting wasted. Now, there are some positive projects. There are some positive organizations. Blacks for Trump was actually an organization that did a lot of good. President Trump spoke very highly of his Blacks for Trump folks. And the reason is not necessarily to say we're proving to black people we're not racist. No, the goal of conservatives reaching out to African Americans is to show them how they've been brainwashed by the Democratic Party. Do you agree that African Americans and minorities as a whole have been tricked and bamboozled by the Democratic Party to believe that their party somehow does something positive for them?
Well, I think that that's part of it, but I think that it's innate. I don't think that this is just because some con man Democrat went into the hood and lied to them. I think that they're predisposed to this kind of thing because right wing way of life, like the rule and order thing, kind of big with white folks. You know, white people go into an area and they create civilization like a dog creates a bark. You know, white people go into a place and they create civilization like a beaver builds a dam or like a Jew subverts it. I mean, it's just what we do. And so when we get displaced, when there's fewer and fewer of us and more of other types of people in an area, then the whole law and order thing collapses. And it's obvious, and it's happened so many times.
That's not really a response. If you agree that the Democratic Party has pretty much used con-level tricks in order to get certain communities, and a lot of this is the media. The media says, hey, Democrats are the valorous party of minorities, and that plays into it. Why wouldn't you want to try to undermine that? Why would you just give up? Isn't that like cowering? That's like the epitome of being a coward, right?
Well, like the rugged individualism free market thing favors whites. It's true. And so when the Democrats are like, you're racist, well, you know, I used to think of racism as I hate people on account of their skin color, and I thought that was stupid. And then I realized racism was just, hey, stuff that benefits whites, right? So if the free market and you know, cutting back at the welfare state and stuff like that is going to disproportionately benefit white people over black people, and that's now the definition of racism, well, then in that sense, the Democrats aren't really lying. They're just saying, hey, these guys are going to keep more of their own money and not give it to you, and you shouldn't let them do that. And people are just voting in their own best interests at that point. So are they brainwashing them? Yeah, I mean, you know, it's but it's a thing that bears a sense of truth to it, right?
And I would just say, like,
no, I couldn't disagree more. Wait, James. Since you're inserting yourself into the debate time and time again, do you agree with what Cantwell just said? I'd like to get you on record saying you agree with that as well.
Non-whites benefit disproportionately from the welfare state. You acknowledged that earlier in the conversation.
Yes. Everyone acknowledges this. I mean, this is a simple calculation. And so when Democrats go into the inner cities or go into minority communities and say, hey, we're going to propose economic projects that will give more money to you from the tax base, people are going to vote in their own interest, right? This is why white people tend to vote for smaller government and less taxes, because whites are the ones paying the majority of the American tax burden. They don't want to be taxed and send their money to other groups or to other people. They want to keep their own money. That's a natural inclination. But when people don't have money as a group on average, and they want more money, they want more programs and social services and to be taken care of by the government, they'll vote for the bigger programs. So while we can rationally say, right, that yes, this is bad for these communities because it makes them not self-sufficient, it makes them government dependent, we can rationally say that. If you go to someone and tell them that, they're going to have to weigh that versus, well, this may be bad for me. This is not, good for my psyche, good for my community, but it's how I get fed. It's how my community sustains itself. So you're not going to convince people to bite the hand that feeds them effectively.
And the thing about it is, what they do is they go in there and they talk about equality, right? They go in there and say equality, 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 equality. So it's not even just a matter of like giving them stuff, which you could go and reasonably make the argument to blacks in the hood that, hey, it's not in your best interest to be stuck on the welfare state. If you were sort of kicked out of the nest, you'd learn to fly or whatever. Fine. You could go make that case. I don't think most of them would respond to it. But a lot of it is just like, that's when they talk about taxing the rich or whatever like this. They're also talking about bringing other people down. It's literally part of the ideology. If you can't bring the black community up, bring down the whites, and that accomplishes the egalitarian goal just the same. And so these are bad ideas. They're not good in the interest of the country, and a lot of individual blacks, suffer negatively as a result of it. But this is what's going on. And the idea that you're just going to go in there and start giving people economics lessons when they don't understand how to run their own lives. I'm going to try to explain, that I'm going to go in there and explain macroeconomics to people who can't figure out how to balance their own checkbook. It's obnoxiously stupid to think that that's going to happen.
Well, I want to say real quick, I do agree with RC. I think it's foolish to sort of just write off, giving information to non-white people and just say, oh, we've completely lost the battle, but at the same time, I do agree that, yes, I mean, you look at the Roy Moore election, for instance, I believe 98% of black women voted for the Democrat. And so in that case, I do understand where this attitude comes.
And what happened? And there was a loss for the Republican. And the Republican Party, they just abandoned the African American vote because, number one, they didn't have a candidate they thought can win it. That's why you prefer a more electable candidate. But simultaneously, they just lost the vote, and it's outright because they didn't even try. And that's the thing. You said you would prefer Republicans in seat versus Democrats in seat. I am someone who says I like a good challenge. You want me to go into a low-income community where, most of these people probably haven't even checked their own credit score, let alone they don't understand how, dependence policy has a weighing effect on their psyche and on them on a systemic and generational level. I would prefer a Republican Party that says, let's go into those communities, let's educate as many people as we can, we'll take as many votes as we can, and we get out, and at the end of the day, we might get a seat out of it. But that's also because I understand optics and I understand reality and practical instantiations of my ideology, and I'm not just sitting at home on a radio show doing it. So I think that's also where we differ.
If I was just sitting at home, I wouldn't be in Virginia right now. But the fact of the matter is that, like, look, you come here and you pitch this as if blacks are just as likely to be conservatives as white people, and it's just demonstrably false. If it was a matter of why would we have to go out of our way to go and educate blacks on what conservatism is?
Because we're decades behind the psychological warfare the Democrats have in these communities, and it's not just black communities. There are Latino communities, Asian communities. We all have access
to the same media. We all have access to the same. The schools differ, from place to place, obviously, okay? But like everybody has essentially the same access to the information. And for some reason, white people vote one way and have one set of ideas, and non-whites have a completely different set of ideas. No matter how much information is put out there, the ideas don't seem to change. And for some reason, even as that's explained to you right here, and you claim to be somebody who's savvy about politics, you don't accept that.
You literally just said they have access to the same kinds of information everyone else does. If you understood anything about mass communication, you would understand that information is disseminated to communities that have access to it. So if you're commonly watching music channels, you're going to hear what music channels have to say about politics. If you're getting your if you're getting your media from the LA Times, you're going to hear what the LA Times has to say. So certain people were only given access. So you're necessarily wrong about the fact that everyone's.
But if they're deciding to watch music videos instead of Fox News, then I'm not surprised that they make less informed political opinions, but it's a choice that they make, right? If they choose to watch MSNBC because they agree with it, then they're making a choice to do it. I mean, most people would and maybe I don't know what the numbers of people who have cable in the hood are or whatever, but if they have access to television, then they have access to conservative and left-wing television. They're making a choice to listen to left-wing television. Yeah, so they have access to it, and they're choosing not to. They, who the hell doesn't have a smartphone at this point, right? I mean, you can go walk. You get the goddamn federal government will give you one at this point. Anybody has access to the internet at this point. You can go find the information if you want. And what? Blacks just don't care. Blacks are like, well, everything's going swell for me, so why would I do some research on politics?
And this is spoken. Exactly what you said is spoken by someone who is more concerned with their own brand than actually influencing social change. And this is just true. You maybe haven't read Burke. You don't just say, "Oh, that person's at home watching music videos and not Fox News." Oh well, I can't influence their way of thinking.
You're the one who said
no, that's not what people. No. That's what you just said. They're watching music videos. They're not watching Fox News. I guess I can't influence their mode of thinking. No, that's where you actually would try to influence their mode of thinking. And there's certain things that you have to do. You don't just start with saying, maybe you turn off VH1 and turn on Fox News. No, you have to get them interested in what's happening culturally, get them interested in what's happening politically. You can do that via a litany of things. That's, we don't have to discuss that right now, but that shows the difference. You see someone watching a music video and not Fox News, and you say, man, I can't influence their mode of thinking, and someone who actually cares about optics, perception, and is actually, would prefer to lift a finger in order to save this country and save their race, as you said, would probably take a little bit more of a forthcoming approach to change something.
Because my big problem is lack of effort, of course. Yeah, thanks for clarifying. So, and by the way, maybe you forgot already, but the listeners with an IQ over 100 will remember that you're the one who brought up blacks watching music videos. So anyway, but it's just. The idea here is that the evidence is look. You're a content producer of some sort. You're a moderately right wing guy. You have a YouTube channel. You get analytics on it.
No, I don't do any of that. I don't do that stuff.
You don't have any demographic information. Who's listening to you?
No.
Why are we having this conversation? I don't even understand what. So I would be interested to find out if you have more white or black audience members, and I'm going to go ahead and guess that your audience is overwhelmingly white. If you have one. I mean, maybe you don't.
I mean, yeah, I would probably say that. True.
I think that's true, yeah, because there are more white conservatives and RC is very conservative.
Okay, so given that, right? So if I have a mostly white audience and you have a mostly white audience, I'm going to go ahead and guess you're not going out of your way to piss off black people.
What do you mean?
I'm going to go ahead and guess that the problem with your audience being almost entirely white is not that you're a racist.
Depending on who you talk to, they might say something, but
Well, I'm
but
sure
yes,
that
I agree. But yes,
call you racist. But the fact of the matter is, you're like, all right, my audience is almost entirely white, and it's probably going to remain that way. No, it's not entirely white, by the way. If you listen to Radical Agenda, I got Jews, I got mulattoes, I got blacks, I got Cubans, I got all types of people.
You got some brothers. You got some brothers.
I got some cultural enrichment onto the show every now and then. Okay. And they appreciate, I think, not being pandered to, as a lot of other conservative media personalities do. And so we have some interesting discussions. But my audience is overwhelmingly white, and I'm going to go ahead and guess that that's going to be the case for every conservative commentator, no matter what the color of his skin. And I would go so far as to say I wouldn't be shocked to find out that you have that I have more non-white listeners than a lot of other people. I can tell you for sure You know, I was on Free Talk Live before I got fired from broadcast radio. Those guys wanted to make sure that they never offended anybody. You know, for me to even talk about science that might be perceived negatively by blacks, I got fired. Right? I know just from the callers that I have more non-white listeners than Free Talk Live because I make no effort whatsoever not to piss these people off, and a lot of them appreciate not being pandered to. And I feel like that probably comes off that way with conservatives a lot of time. I know whenever I see a black guy on Fox News, it is almost invariably like, hey, black guy, come on and show people how not racist I am. And it's like obnoxious and nauseating, right?
And that's actually maybe one thing we will agree on. I think the whole black conservative angle becomes a bit cringy at times. I think this is, you know,
so why are you trying to create more of them?
My goal is to create enough of them to the point where it's not even an anomaly anymore. It's not even a trinket. And it shouldn't be a trinket. It's not surprising that you would find someone in America who, in 2018, who is black, who is anti-gay marriage because they're Christian, who also thinks that there are two genders, who also thinks that if you're an illegal, you shouldn't be taking money of taxpayers. That shouldn't, you know, that's probably at least half of African Americans. However, half of them vote Democrat. My goal would be to change that so we can have more seats in the House and in the Senate, as opposed to just saying, fuck it, let's just get all white people to move to New Hampshire.
Well, I understand.
that makes me crazy.
You like that, right? You wouldn't like if I succeeded. That probably wouldn't work out very well for you, right? If all the white people are up over here with their own system of government, you sort of understand what's going to happen to the rest of the country, right?
Hey, as long as you leave a couple snow bunnies behind for me, I don't care what you do. You take them,
there you go,
take them to New Hampshire.
As long as you have access to white people, you're all right, right?
Yeah, of course. You can't take all my whiteys.
There we go. Thanks for clarifying.
Okay, let's jump and do a couple super chats real quick, and then we'll move in toward the end. We'll get towards wrapping it up here. Go a couple more minutes. We got a lot of people jumping in the super chat. We do appreciate that. Icebane $2 says hail Cantwell. Zynobis says Ricky Vaughn versus Hardmus debate needs to happen. Don't know who that is. Who's Hardmus? Am I missing something?
Hardmouse is a Gab personality who probably don't like Ricky Vaughn very much.
Okay. American Fossil $5 says you'll never win the hearts and minds of people who want to see you and your children dead and displaced. RC has his head in the clouds. 1433. Monster Chief 117 $2 says have Cantwell on more. Get him on Warski too. Yeah, we should do that. Zymic 77 says as a white Polish and American race mixer with a Chinese wife, we both have and always will support Chris Cantwell and a 90% white America. Red Elephants $5 says no RC. Blacks and Hispanics in Gen Z vote overwhelmingly for Clinton. A fact, more Gen Z whites are waking up, not blacks. These are facts. Ethan Hawley $5 says for a very understandable reason, RC's in denial. Deep down, he knows that absent whites, blacks will not be able to continue to live in a civilized society. Common Sense Jew Control $10 says no stats. CIA fact book lists all sub-Saharan African countries at lowest GDP per capita on Earth. Biology is racist. Send Monero to Cantwell's Dodge Challenger Fund. Gas TR, a couple slash symbols, NNY, F something freaks 1433. You can figure that out for your own. Shaolin Stacker $5. RC, you can't even get minorities on your side. They hate you and violently attack you. I think the guy who punched you was white, RC, wasn't he? He was a white guy?
Yes. Yeah, he was white.
That's right. Ethan C, $2.
Probably a Jew.
Jesus, it's secession, not succession. American Fossil says $2. If RC's position had merit, Ron Paul would have won. He tried to warn us. Jason Todd, €5 said, RC Maxwell, you say that secession from the U.S. won't happen, can't happen. How was the U.S. created? It was created, obviously, in a Revolutionary War. Davies Volt, $5 says, hail Cantwell. RC uses the same tactics as Destiny and Halsey. Lance, $5. Chris, you're on fire tonight. This person doesn't understand how clueless he is. Respond to my Gab message, please. Also, rules baked is our goof. RC, Alan Quartermain, $2. RC is ungrateful. Hagalaz, Virginia, $5 says RC is strawmanning Chris and conflating his views with absurdity. I wish someone would call him out. Ashley, $2 is glad to see Cantwell back. And finally, Toasted Network, $2 says biology has nothing to do with political opinion. And I think that's RC, you would actually probably agree with that. That biology and politics are not related.
No, I mean, politics is inherently man-made, so... I mean, here's the thing. When Cantwell is talking about, when he talks about biologic predispositions, yes, I would agree with evidence from Hillman that says that people are predisposed to have certain differences based upon race, class, language, religion. these are inevitable kind of differences that people have. Whether or not people can ameliorate these differences to live in peaceful civil society is a separate question. I think the answer to that is a yes. I think Cantwell would disagree with me.
Well, it's not that nobody can, right? I mean, look, you're obviously very well trained or whatever, and that's fantastic. But the fact of the matter is that if I go and I expend the type of resources that I don't think that there's any amount of resources I could expend to accomplish the goal. But if I were to try to expend resources to go and try to convince blacks to vote Republican, the return on my investment would be so small as to diminish my resources before I could accomplish a more reasonable goal. You understand?
Yeah, I mean, but this is politics. Politics is a multi-billion-dollar industry. So spending money in order to reach out to certain ethnic groups would only behoove the political entity reaching out to do that. So it would only help Republicans to continue trying to get as many votes as we possibly can.
No, because there's a limited amount of resources.
Of agreeing with the Democrats. No, there's not.
There's a limited amount of resources, though, right? So it's not like we just, we spend billions of dollars, so why don't we just spend them all in the hood? It doesn't work that way, right?
In politics, it does. In politics, there's kind of an endless war chest, hypothetically.
No, there's not an endless war chest. I understand that once the numbers get so astronomically big, it might escape your attention capacity. But at the same time, they are limited at the same time.
Of course,
and so
of course.
If the Republican Party just decided, okay, guys, last year we spent this much money trying to convince the blacks, let's double it. Well, that's a bunch of money that they're not spending on whites. And one of the calculations that they take into consideration when they do these things, the calculation is partially when I go and I target this demographic, which, by the way, since we're targeting demographics, we're acknowledging that some things are sort of innate, right? So that's just obvious on its face. But when we're going to go target this demographic, what was our return on investment? How much did we pay per vote, right? And so when they're spending astronomically more amounts of money trying to gain black votes, at some point you have to say, this is not an efficient use of my resource.
Given the fact that if Republicans were to get just 10% more of, and I don't know why we're just talking about the African American vote when the Latino American vote is just as important for Republicans to capture.
More when they're taking over the country thanks to the open borders. Yeah. If we are able to get small percentages, if we're able to make gains in that area, the Democrats are dead in the water. They would be dead in the water. In fact, that's about all they have left. All they have left is hanging on to these kind of swaths of votes from minority communities. So given that's how much Democrats have at stake here to lose in a world in which they lose these minority votes, I don't know why it would be problematic to continue to spend money to get these votes. If anything, you don't look at the previous year and say, okay, let's double it. What I would prefer is the RNC and these political entities say, how did we spend this money? What message are we using? Are we communicating effectively? I would fine-tune the message to hit at home a little more perfectly. And here's the thing. The RNC, they aren't communicating their message how they need to communicate it. They aren't just saying flat out what they need to be saying, which is, you voted for Democrats for the past 40 years, and take a look at some of these communities. They're shitholes. That's exactly what Donald Trump said, and he got 11% of the black vote.
No, so that's a message that started to come out, and that's what I'll tell you. Donald Trump's full community outreach message, he wasn't even allowed to hit it because he dealt with so many attacks that his team, they had to change their strategy. But he started to say that, and he got the largest percentage of African Americans, and he won the election. So it sounds like attempting to do that is a good thing, especially when it gets Republican asses in seats. So thank you for proving my point.
No, I don't think that I've proven your point, but I'm not surprised you tried to say that. So the fact of the matter is that Donald Trump did say that, and he managed to get 11% of the vote. But what's happening is the demographics are changing, right? The demographics are changing faster than we can convince hearts and minds, okay? So we are subsidizing the breeding of non-whites. We are subsidizing the importation of non-whites. Non-whites do not vote Republican, and so they're breeding faster than we can convince.
Not all whites vote Republican too, though.
I understand that, which is why women shouldn't be able to vote, by the way, but that's a whole nother topic for another discussion, perhaps. Okay. So in my ethno state, the men decide who gets the goddamn nukes. Okay. So, but that's besides the point in any case. All right. White men create order, and people who are not white men, they destroy order. So that's why we just keep our women over here, and then they're kept in control under the patriarchy. All right.
Hashtag
there we go. So, but all this other stuff that's going on makes it impossible, right? And so we end up. You're saying, well, they're not communicating their message effectively. Well, here's our policies, right? If you don't agree with our policies and you want to vote for other policies, then that seems to be like prima facie evidence that these ethnic groups have different interests than us. Why would I start catering? Why would I start changing it?
Hey, real quick, Cantwell, does RC get a special pass in your ethno state? Does he get a visit?
Oh man.
I'm just wondering.
I don't know if I want to be in a Cantwell ethno state where bitches can't vote. That sounds all sorts of abusive.
You're sure you don't want to visit?
Believe me when I tell you, you're gonna be scrambling towards the wall once we get it. It's gonna be fantastic. We're gonna have, the biggest problem that we're gonna have is not like a military invasion. It's literally just the hordes of immigrants trying to get in are gonna put pressure on the wall. We're gonna have to make it thicker, not higher. And so,
this ethno state also includes wood chippers, I hear.
We definitely have wood chippers, but they collect dust because we have nobody to put through them.
That's horrible. All righty, hey guys, we're getting towards the tail end of this here. Why don't let's who spoke first? I think Chris went first at the start of this. Let's let RC go first with his closing statement. Take as much time as you like here. I mean, obviously not like too long, but just let people know, summarize your argument, summarize your point about optics, about ethno versus civic nationalism, whatever you want to say, and then we'll move towards the end here.
Well, I'll close just simply put. I mean, people see me come out here. I like to debate against the alt-right, whatever that means. People think I hate the alt-right, but in actuality, I think there's a lot of commonalities in the views that I have, and even some of the views that Chris has. But I think the differences that we do have are major. I feel that we've heard some very telling things this evening. We heard Chris Cantwell pretty much admit that he agrees with how the way Democrats construct the world in terms of the Constitution is for whites and his belief. And we've heard Chris agree with Democrats when he says that, if you're a non-white, you should be voting with the Democratic Party. And we've also heard Chris pretty much admit that he's conceded America. People at home, the Hail Cantwell people, they're going to support Cantwell and all that, but that's not what I'm doing this debate for. I'm doing this debate for the 13-year-olds, the 14-year-olds, maybe, hell, the 20-year-olds who aren't super politically active and who kind of they see the culture war, they see what's happening, and they pretty much want to pick sides. My belief is simple. You should go about your life with a certain sort of class and respect level that you would like other people to have access to. And I think going about that level will always believe you'll always attract more bees with honey. And as a result, I feel politically that we need to continue to do our due diligence to make sure that we inform communities of just what's taking place, what globalists are attempting, what socialists, what Marxists, the ways that we educate people about the ways they're attempting to undermine America, and how we simply should preserve that. It's not a matter of racial identity. We should preserve America's values simply because they afford us the best liberties and the best life on the planet. A world without that is obviously a world that I wouldn't want to live in. But furthermore, I would just like to say it's important for people to take note of the kind of things that Mr. Cantwell attached himself to. Just remember that he said he's pretty much conceded America. He's not really fighting for America. He's pretty much blackpilled to the point in which he believes there is no redeeming qualities about America as we see it, and I wholeheartedly disagree. So if you're an advocate of America and its traditional ethics and values, as am I, then you probably believe that I won the debate. Also, simultaneously, because I'm ultimately the only person that has a practical, historic understanding of the world, and only through looking through history can you make predictions about the future. So definitely don't give up. If you're white and you see a non-white person who leans to the left, don't give up on that person. Try to slip a little red pill in there.
All right, thank you, RC, and let's go ahead and have a closing statement from Mr. Cantwell.
I am doing this for all of the white people out there who know that their life is not going to improve when they become a minority in their own country. I'm doing this debate for all of the white people out there who, when they look at their historical perspective, they see all the values that they think America stands for declining as the demographics change. These are undeniable facts, and it becomes really difficult to have these discussions calmly because it's so It's so plainly obvious that as the country gets darker, all of these supposed values that we're trying to maintain seem to be going out the window. And there's a handful of people out there who are realizing that these two things are interconnected. And there seems to be a bunch of people who have other interests trying to distract from that really very real fact. And now we've gotten it to a point where we're if Donald Trump got everything he wanted on immigration, it would delay white minority in America by like 5 years, according to the Washington Post. That is staggering. And when that happens, things are not going to get better. When whites are the minority, it's not like all the non-whites in America are just going to turn around and be like, hey, wait a second, whites are the minority now, we need to protect them. You know, white people think a lot of them don't think being a minority in their own country is going to be a bad thing, because they think that minorities are a thing that are protected. Well, that's not the way it works when you're the minority. White folks, go take a look at South Africa. Go look at any number of places where this has happened. It doesn't work out well for us. And so I think that we need to live under a separate system of government. We should not be sharing a system of government with people who have interests that are diametrically opposed to ours. The purpose of the state is the maintenance of the race. And as soon as we forget about that, then all of a sudden we get inundated with other people, and all of the things that we stand for, they go by the wayside, and we're condemned as moral outcasts for noticing these obvious facts. And when that is the case, then yeah, you know, you have to have some people who are willing to throw optics out the window. You have to have people who are willing to say, I don't care what people say about me. I don't care if you want to attack me in the streets. I don't care if the Jews are going to try to censor me off the internet. I'm going to tell the goddamn truth. Optics be damned. I'm going to save my race and nation. And if you don't have people who are willing to do that, then the race and nation will fail, and civilization will die with us. Good luck.